They obviously weren't listening to us.
Stick these things. We're awake. Guess we're rolling.
All right, I'd like to call the April 14th, 2015 Public Works Board to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pickard?
Here.
Mr. Reich?
Here.
Mrs. Wolf is not here. Mr. Temperley?
Here.
Mr. Fritsch?
Here.
Next is correction and/or approval of the minutes of our last meeting, February 10th. Minutes are in our packet. Anybody wish to make a motion or?
I'll move the minutes as printed.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 4, question and public comment. I don't think I see any. So we'll move on to item 5, discussion on Mulberry Street project.
You ready? Yeah, we're ready.
Yeah.
Okay. We were awarded the grant to do a project on Mulberry Street. It wasn't the full street, it was a certain distance. Some of the debate that's going on is exactly which portion of Mulberry Street should we be looking at upgrading.
But there will be 2019?
It will be 2019. We've been working with them on that schedule and have started all the processes to get it done in 2019. We received $1.3 million, which we have to match. It's a little bit more than we originally anticipated. The question is all of Mulberry Street needs to be worked on, I would say, right, Paul?
I would say yes.
Yeah. That being said, first of all, we have to build it. This is federal money, so we have to build it to the T standards, which you understand what that means.
Including,
Explain it again.
5-foot sidewalks, bike lanes.
Bike lanes?
You got it.
The same standards as
South Main.
as South Main.
Which means that there will be some difficulties. Obviously, there are some historic issues there that are going to have to be resolved. So I think the first thing they were working on was the historic review, see what did and didn't have to be done on the street or couldn't be done. And so they're working through that process. From our standpoint, stormwater, water main, and sanitary sewer are probably the biggest issues for us. And on the south end of Mulberry Street, there's some stormwater that drains to Madison Street. And if you remember, the Madison Street stormwater was put in when North Main was done. So everything from the crest on Madison Street out by St. Paul's, where St. Paul's School is and everything, and all the way up the hill, up Fremont and College and all those, that all drains down into that system. Everything all the way up to the BP gas station, out to the cemetery, Lake Mills Elementary School, that all drains into that system. And when you get a good rain, anything over, I'd say probably a 10-year storm, that thing is full. So there's not a lot of capacity to bring anything down into that system unless we want to start back here again and run it out and upsize it. And I think that one was already a pretty good sized pipe. I think it's a 48-inch elliptical. So that watershed on Mulberry, or most of Mulberry, should be draining out towards Owen Street and then out towards that stormwater detention basin up behind Wisco Farms.
and there are some storm catch basins there already, and I assume they drain that way?
There aren't any on Mulberry. I think the closest ones are at the intersection of Owen and Fargo, which is by Memorial Park.
Yeah. But I just drove it. I think there are some,
I think there are some, but it's very minimal
yeah,
Hold-
not
hold
not a
it.
lot, but some.
Where?
on Mulberry.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some on the south end of Mulberry that drain to Main Street.
No, there-
Because the whole bank, and I think two intersections, I think Oak and, 2 blocks.
I was thinking
there-
Louise and Mulberry. I think
Yeah.
There's one,
There's one at Luis and Mulberry.
and one up in, I think,
Well, that's got to drain to Main Street. And there's some at Prairie. They're the four corners at Prairie have it, but that's because we run that pipe from the pond behind those apartments down Prairie, and then it outlets into that right of way there, just where Prairie Street dead ends,
There's-
just past Pope.
With all the work that's been done on Owen, I would think there's some on Owen, I don't remember.
There is on Owen.
Yeah.
That new subdivision built it.
Yeah.
There is, Wisco Farms put some in, we put some in. But the issue there is, again, it was sized just to handle Owen Street. And not sized to handle what would eventually be the whole watershed up there, which is gonna be, Fargo, O'Neill, Reed, all the way to, Prospect at, Birch Street. So where the Methodist Church is and that southwest corner of the Lake Mills Elementary School and several of those areas all drain that way. There's absolutely no stormwater piping anywhere in that area. We are currently in the process of building stormwater from Owen Street down Fargo to Browns Court. And that will give us some relief.
So the I-94 intersection area drains, it crosses Mulberry Street, right? It goes past the pond or whatever you call it out there by the apartment buildings. That drains to the southeast, right? Yeah, well, if it goes under Prairie, it goes under Mulberry, right?
Yes, it goes down Mulberry. Everything from County Highway V drains south down Mulberry, southwest down
Right.
Mulberry to the Prairie intersection. And then it runs into some inlets there or around the curve and down Prairie out towards the ditch at the end of where Prairie dead ends.
So it's got to go that way or this way towards,
There are three options. Of Fargo, we can run some down Fargo to Owen Street. We can run some down the old CP right away. Which, if you look behind those new buildings on O'Neill Street, there's apartments on the north side, and there are those new assisted living facilities on the south side. There's a big ditch there. That could be run all the way up to Mulberry.
is there a right-of-way there already?
Yes, that's a dedicated right-of-way. That's another option, and then Prairie is the other option. And obviously Prairie and Fargo are going to have limited capacities because of the existing pipes that they're running into. So you have to look at probably the CP right away as the primary drainage area. You still have problems when you hit Owen Street because all of it runs into that same pipe. Fargo and O'Neill and the CP right away will all run into the same pipe there at CP and Owen. And probably have to be twice the size it is, or run one on each side of the street, or
It's pretty big once you get past Crystal Farms.
past Crystal Farms.
It's pretty big down that way. I think 48 inch from memory.
So there are some things we're going to have to look at and figure out, and we've done some analysis on the watershed already. That's why we're involved with the Fargo Street storm sewer right now. But I think that eventually when you're looking at this and you're doing your long-term planning, the main driver is going to be stormwater. Probably then we're going to have to examine the sanitary sewer, televise it, go and do some visual inspections of the manholes and that type of stuff and see what we have there. And we'll probably have to do some analysis. I know for a fact that there are several lead services on that street, which means that water main is probably pretty old. So there may be areas in there that we want to look at and see what we've got and make a determination on putting those three items together, what area works best for us and locating that. That being said, that's all technical stuff. You guys have anything you want to add? There any?
Well, your question is, we can't do the whole street. We can only do part of it. You gave us a map. Is that what you're saying, that's all we can afford? Is that section there?
When we did the grant, we did all our estimates based on that.
Okay.
Now, they gave us a little bit more money than that. And really, when we did this, we kind of just drew some lines on a thing and did a budget estimate and threw it out there. Really didn't do any other analysis other than we need to do Mulberry Street and we can get a grant. Now we've got a grant and we need to figure out exactly how we're going to best spend that money. And like I said, we've gone through and done all our technical analysis, or will be doing it. Is there anything you guys think we should be looking at?
I mean, other than the street rebuild?
No. What would you, are there some things in there that maybe you think would drive where that street should be built? Do you think that one portion of the street's worse than the other, or there are some things that we should save there and you may want to wait a while before you go in and tear it up? Or I know there are a lot of big trees on the south end of that street. It's also the narrowest part of the street and will be most affected by the wider sidewalks and the bike lanes.
It's more sloped on the
Yeah, it's very
sides, on
slopey there.
on the south side versus farther north, right?
Yes.
You mean it has more of a crown?
No, the terraces, right?
Right.
The terraces.
Steep.
So there are all kinds of issues there that may make that one easier to push off for a while, or, those are things that, from our standpoint, we're just going to take the right of way and cut the street back and take all the trees down unless.
You live in that street, Doug. What's,
I guess, my feeling is that, probably the oldest part of the street, which is, I think, the closest to Madison, probably is the worst part, and then as you go up,
because that one part doesn't, the curb is gone pretty much. The curb is so much in the ground, there's really no curb and gutter there at all.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with, a couple things. Obviously, it's settled because there's no base there. That street's built on mud. And second of all, when we fixed it, we overlaid it, and to level the street out, we just laid it into the gutter until they hit that point, because that was the easiest way to do it with the curb sinking.
Can I add something? So we had a meeting with the management consultant. It's another engineering firm that's contracted by WISDOT to manage these projects for them. And they allowed us the flexibility to, even though that is the stretch there from Oak to Fargo that we applied for, you could shift that north or south, start at Madison and end at Fargo, or start at Madison, and they said that they were going to allow us to shift the limits. And so I think that's what Steve is asking is, should we go to Madison and reduce where we go to the north? That said, there is this a little over $1 million of the federal money is their 80% of the grant that based off our preliminary meeting, they said that as far as that money can go, then great, good for you, then that's as far as the money can go, meaning, if you design and bid a project and that'll get you, farther than those limits there, then go ahead and do it. So I guess the really, like Steve was saying, is, where do we want to try to start and stop the project? What's the most critical portion of Mulberry? Another thing we discussed at the meeting was, it's a little bit unusual for this stretch that you're stopping 1 block short of a fairly major street. And then you're also stopping about 2 blocks short of another fairly major street up at Grant, going east and west. That, they sort of suggested, it wasn't like you have to, but it was like, maybe think about connecting this to Madison Street. So that was a possibility, but obviously that's what you guys are here, we're asking for your opinion
What's
on.
the newest stretch, as you come in towards the downtown, you go from County Trunk V southwestward, and you get to about Grant Street, and I think that's about where they built it to more modern standards, and so we don't really need to touch that part right now?
I believe as you go farther north, it widens out.
Yes, it
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
At that point, he's right at Grant Street, it widens out. The pavement's bad there. There's no stormwater drainage. The anticipation is that we'd like to find out what the water and sewer are like there. The sewer was pretty bad when we redid CP.
There's no-
Down,
there's
and then
no-
Prairie.
There's nothing under Mulberry as far as stormwater north of that,
No, it drains to
yeah.
Prairie. Yeah, and Grant is the high point. It breaks and goes in 2 different directions. I know that he suggested that we expand beyond what the match was, but you have to remember this is 19, and 18 we're spending
Yeah.
$6.5 million on South Main Street. So it would be tough to come back and pull together more money again the next year.
But then again, if you take and reconstruct from, well, let's say Madison to Fargo, then you're gonna have a stretch which is narrower, and then it gets wider again.
That maybe end up with what happens anyways. That's why I did mention right away the historical part. That may play a significant part in what ends up getting constructed there.
When you say historical, what do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know what it means. What I know is that the state has to do a historical review, and the consultant told us based on what that historical review determines, we'll determine what we can and can't.
Based on what records we have of the building of the road?
No, based on what they determined to be historical buildings and historical sites and historical features. As I remember, he said a tree could be determined to be historical. A fence could be determined to be historical. A home could be determined to be historical. So once that survey's done and we know where we're going to get the right of way and where we're not going to, that really then starts determining how wide the street can be, what features are going to have to be eliminated or not eliminated. So we talked about a lot of technical items like, well, you could get away with a 4-foot sidewalk as long as you had plenty of driveways where it was 5 feet wide and handicapped people could turn around, which obviously it would here. So we're kind of working through those conversations, but I'm assuming that as we start doing our technical review, the historical district will define how the street's going to actually be constructed. As you move further north, obviously, it's already to the full width. It'll be constructed to the full width as required. So we're trying to kind of search for things that are going to give us an idea of what's the best location to start.
Well, so you said that it could conceivably be still the old width and a narrow part of the section, like from Fargo to Grant. And then we're looking at how long would that be before that gets touched? Unknown.
Unknown. I'm not going to claim to know what politics will be next year, much less in 2019. Economics could change substantially, politics, I mean,
Is that stretch from Madison Street to Oak Street, where the bank is, with the parking lot there? Is that in relatively good, same condition as what's farther north?
we reconstructed, I think, that at least one block, maybe 2 blocks from Madison North.
That's what I thought.
So I shouldn't say we reconstructed it, but we did a full width, full depth asphalt pavement. Probably shortly after the bank was built. That's probably the best shape of the whole area, in my opinion, obvious. You know, the overall condition, the look of the area from Grand Street North, but there's a lot of alligator cracking and the curb and gutter look good. I imagine probably the water and sanitary sewer are in the best shape of all of it. But again, when we did that stretch down CP Avenue, that was in terrible shape, and that wasn't that old either. So it kind of falls into all the technical review. But besides, I know what we're going to do for the technical review. We're gonna send Bill out, and he's going to TV it, and we're going to do some data review, drawing reviews, and we're going to go out and do some surveys. But what else should we be looking for that'll help us make those determinations? I'm sure we'll get a tree survey, and eventually we'll have the historic home survey. I didn't see any brownfields in this area. I already discussed the drainage. What about the electric?
Shouldn't be any issues there.
Would that just be the electric and utilities run along the east side of the street? Would that just be moved back or what?
I would think so. We haven't looked real close at it, but I can't think of any major conflicts there right now.
I can't either,
I
but
can't either. I think
That
there's more
doesn't mean-
crossings than anything.
I know we'll want to put in a,
Utilities do cross up at Grant.
Yes.
I know that the school district has asked for a reflective crossing light at Fargo and Mulberry.
Same like as a college.
Yeah.
Still have enough traffic there to,
I don't know that they have enough child traffic, but they have enough car traffic that the ones who do have to cross they're concerned, probably not enough to have a crossing guard anymore, but some kind of risk reduction device.
yeah, there was a tragedy that occurred a number of years ago.
So the question is, do we want to add more? I've got nothing to add.
Okay. We're going to try and stretch it as long as we can. I think we'll probably start at Grant and head south as far as we can go. That would be my initial reaction.
Sounds good to me.
I didn't know if there was anything I was missing, but from my standpoint, and I think, probably the rest of us, that's the most logical choice right now. There might be some that drives it later.
And size the stormwater so it can handle the rest going to the northeast then?
Yeah, we're gonna have to, we've already talked to Brandon about doing the stormwater survey and determining how much
far?
is gonna have to come down through that area, because both Prospect and Grant are gonna drain that way.
Doing this stretch that Steve just mentioned would allow you to utilize that drainage way that the city already has. And then also to bring some stormwater to Fargo, where we're this year going to be laying a new pipe with the intent of connecting it to Mulberry in the future. So you would have two kind of predetermined drainage ways to get that water off of Mulberry and going to the north as well.
I personally think that's probably starting from Grant and stretching it far in as you can to the downtown. That would probably make the most sense, and well, maybe something else will come up as we do the detail work that'll change things, but.
It always does, but I don't know if it'll be substantial.
Sounds like a consensus there on what section.
Their garden hoses,
Old field tile?
no oak logs, I hope.
I was thinking
I
that.
haven't seen any oak logs here, but I have in Illinois. Water main
I
ones.
think we had some somewhere.
Yeah, maybe they finally turned into dirt.
They actually, the log is cut like this, and then it has notches in the top, and they drop a board into the top of it. And then what they used to do for firefighting is they would just drill a hole in the top of it, pump the water out. That's why they call it a fire plug.
Thank you for that history lesson.
The evening is worth it now.
Hey,
I like it.
they used to have in the city squares, they used to have these places where you tied your horses up. And when you dig in Illinois, in southern part, the guys with the metal detectors are all over you right around those areas, because that's where they say everybody dropped their coins, hitting up on their horses.
We still have a few around here.
So you got some direction there now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, moving on then to number 6, discussion on cost comparison and benefits of Elster's Solutions and Census.
Brendan.
I'm going to make this one real short. Mark, you and I talked just briefly, but we're putting numbers together to do this cost comparison and do a cost-benefit analysis. And three things, actually. We're taking our time because we want to make sure that when we give you numbers, they're good numbers. What's happened since we last talked is that the Elster folks have changed their pricing slightly. They're going to a volume pricing, or step pricing, if you will, where the more meters you install, the cheaper they get per meter and that sort of thing. So we want to kind of redo our numbers or make sure our numbers reflect that. And then Census, in talking to them and trying to get our numbers together and all that, let us know that there's an intermediate step that we can look at. Instead of going to the full-blown radio read system where we have the towers and all that sort of thing, they have a new and improved, supposedly, drive-by system, which would allow us to move into the full-blown AMI, but do it a little slower, if you will, or over more time, and it may be more beneficial from our cash flow standpoint. Or it may actually show that, given our size and the way we're configured, we don't really need to go to the satellite, or not satellite, the antenna system. So we want to take a look at those numbers and just see how all that plays into putting this program together. The third issue is that we are looking very closely at how we can afford this. how we can cash flow it, what our options are as far as how many years we would have to deploy it, and what our return would be. And again, before we do that, we want to make sure we have really good numbers. There's a little bit of incentive to get this rolling as soon as possible because we're at kind of a good juncture to make a change, but not such that we have to rush into it. And so we're going to take our time. This might be a case where the technology hasn't quite settled yet. And so it maybe is worth our while to, kind of let that ease in a bit more. So we don't have numbers for you tonight. We're looking to have things together for the next meeting, and I hope that's acceptable to you. Okay,
All right,
thanks.
sounds good. And nothing else, then we'll move on to item 7, discussion on Department of Public Works design plans. And we have a cost sheet and a couple of floor plan sheets.
I don't know if you guys remember Brendan Kress. He is with Strand and Associates. He actually did the design and is really kind of our project manager on the new light and water building. And so he's the one that's putting together the plans for this project. And I think, Brendan, you might have some updated numbers too for tonight. So I guess we'll just turn it over to you.
Thanks, everyone. As Paul said, we've been working with the staff on what I would call a preliminary layout for the addition and renovation to the existing Department of Public Works building. And currently, as shown here in the site plan, we're proposing about a 6,500 square foot addition to the northwest corner of the building. And that's shown right. And then there's some interior renovations along with basically some mechanical, electrical systems type upgrades. So it's encapsulating some space for the Parks Department, and then most of the scope of the project is kind of upgrading the system. It's about a 30-year-old building. The systems were maybe antiquated to begin with, but are in need of an upgrade. So this is the site plan. Shows you the current building along with the outbuildings and the location that we're proposing. And this site's really dictating the shape of the building a little bit. This line right here is the setback line from the creek. So you can see we're almost right on top of that there. So this amount of space is really being dictated kind of by that setback and making for an efficient shape of the building. You'll see in the plans that we've presented that maintenance has grown a little bit, but in large part that's the shape of the facility currently. Can I switch it to this one? Or I've got those two.
Is that in here? Oh, yeah.
Why don't we just use, this one's cleaner. So, I don't know if you can zoom out a little bit, Steve.
One more.
Yeah, a little bit more. Okay. Yep. So this is the floor plan, the first floor plan of the building. Right now, this is the end wall, the west wall, and this is the north wall of the existing streets department. Up in this area, there's two loading docks currently, one depressed and then one that's more of a drive-up. We're proposing this addition here and conversion of the utility space for the Parks Department. And you can see these dashed lines with the labels are the Parks facility vehicles. So that brings all of their equipment, their vehicles inside here. The other large, I guess, portion of the addition is this maintenance space, and that's dedicated to parks, but there is some shared space between streets and the parks facility. So again, it's about 6,500 square feet. That's the addition. The intent is to match the existing facility in terms of its construction type, the way it will look from the outside. Inside the facility, we are showing some office area renovation. In large part, this is a wall here or there. We're kind of taking out a wall, creating some space, and then some fit and finish upgrades, new floors, new ceilings, and probably a coat of paint. As mentioned, though, we are proposing brand new mechanical systems for this building. There's currently served by really kind of 2 residential style furnaces for this facility, which is about 35,000 square feet. So to bring it up to today's code, it will have larger makeup air units, things that are required for the garage facility, to kind of exhaust those diesel fumes and keep employees safe. Basically, that's it for the first floor. There is a mezzanine that's being proposed, and again, that's largely for mechanical space from here to here. And this is some existing mezzanine that's used for storage and mechanical currently. Any questions, I guess, about the layout of the building or site?
For the mechanical heating system, the makeup air, is that censored based upon levels of carbon monoxide or exhaust gases?
Correct, yep. It's all CO and CO2 and diesel fuel monitored. There is required air exchanges. I think there's 3 or 4 per hour anyway. But when you reach high levels, probably during startup or when they're coming in and out, those systems will kick on automatically. And that's just a building code requirement, something the building doesn't have currently.
No, they didn't do that 30 years ago, I don't think.
You're exactly correct.
Yeah, thanks.
It's called a door.
Smells kind of bad in here. Open up the door.
Is there any other questions on the facility itself or on the proposed renovation?
There are more renovations on the site too, aren't there? There's some storage and asphalt paving and some work around the salt sheds and.
Yeah. The area across the street, of course, where the substation is now, much of that will be able to be cleared out when the electric utility moves. The area on the same side of the street as the building, between the building and the creek, we're going to reorganize. We'll have more storage room outside. We anticipate taking at least one vehicle, trailer, from the street side over to the Light and Water Building, which will open up a little more parking for them. And then Brendan explained changing the mechanical area a little bit. We're going to reconfigure some of that. Right now, the employees kind of use the back end of the mechanic shop for their crew room. So we're going to move them out of there and actually give them an official crew room, and that gives us more room to have vehicles and that sort of thing back there. It doesn't, given the limitations of the site, it doesn't give us all the space that we really need for all the vehicles for parks or streets, but I think with a little bit of reconfiguration, we can do what we need to do there. Just one other comment I would make. I don't know if any of you have ever been in the building when it rains, but we know right away when it rains because the roof is a disaster. I mean, we've got leaks all over the place. So hopefully we can address some of that. And I would say at least 3 or 4 times a winter, the heat goes out in the bathroom. And it keeps things, people move in and out of there pretty quick. But the whole mechanical system really does need an updating. So I just want to emphasize that that's a significant portion of what we're doing
What kind
here.
of roof do we have on
It's a metal roof.
Flat.
It's
Small slope.
it's got a little bit of
Slope.
slope to it. It's, yeah,
Towards the trucks parked on the right side.
towards the trucks. Yeah, so it kind of slants to the north a little bit. But almost any place there's a, what do you call it when something goes through the roof? What's the technical term for that?
Roof penetration?
Penetration, there's a leak. So it needs some attention.
The other thing that we're doing is the utility side is not a drive-through. Like
Currently,
the-
correct.
Like the UPW side is, so it makes for very inefficient storage of vehicles. So this will then be converted to a full drive-through, so there's some office elimination on the north side and a door put in, and this allows the vehicles to drive through from you'll enter in east side and drive through to the west side.
Right. Yeah, there's very little office space. We anticipate that this building will be pretty much locked up during the day. There'll be no administrative staff or anything, and it will be simply a maintenance shop. All the administrative duties will be going to the Light and Water building.
Well, if it's a drive-through, how are you gonna get around the building? If you're going to enter, do you enter from the west or east or what?
You enter from the east, but you exit on the west.
Then how
But
do
you can drive around this edge. You just can't build into it.
Oh, okay, all right.
There's a building setback, but you can see that they have stuff stored out here, and they drive out here all the time. So this will actually be paved, and you can drive around there. It's just that code doesn't allow you to build a building there.
Is there going to be any kind of diking to prevent any washouts, flooding, or damage from?
You don't dike in an area like this. You might dig a
So in other
stormwater
words, it
detention
gets
basin
washed
down,
away.
but you don't want to trap it in that ditch. So we are doing some stormwater.
Correct.
Yeah, so there will be some stormwater management on site, but there won't be any dikes that I know of.
No, we've talked a little bit about berming by the creek, though, right? And
Yeah, we've talked about some best management practices along there. We don't think there's any requirements, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, but currently there's no stormwater on the site at all. Again, 30 years ago wasn't a requirement, so there most likely will be some that will be required depending upon how we're paving and how much impervious surface we're putting back. But we have talked about the impact that paving closer, or even the current situation is proximity to the creek, and how can we better improve that situation?
Type of materials stored as well, the type of runoff that might be coming off the site, even though the impervious area might not be enlarged to require stormwater treatment, it's kind of being a good steward of the land that you have to put something in, given the nature of this facility.
We're hauling a lot of salt through there, a lot of asphalt, a lot of sand and gravel. We're going to try and keep as much of it out of the creek as we can.
Right.
And there wasn't any stormwater drainage done, so even the typical that you would have seen done at that time wasn't done. There's a pond between the two driveways because there's no stormwater outlet.
Right.
So we're going to plan for a little bit more than what's been there in the past.
Yeah, just as good public relations that the city do it the best that it can to
Yeah.
keep our water pure.
So a lot of this is for the Parks Department, so at some point there will be a determination made as to what percentage of this project is Parks funded versus Public Works?
If it was a utility general fund issue, we would do that.
But it's
It's parks and.
pretty much the same pot of
streets.
money.
It's the same pot of money, and so, and it's out of capital. So we might look at it from a split basis but I'm trying to think why we would.
Yeah, I guess you really don't need to.
No, it's all general fund. You were looking at sewer revenues and water revenues and electric revenues and general fund revenues, then you had to split it all out and figure that out. And so when we did we actually purchased this half of the building from Light and Water. We had to figure out what the original documents were and how much was paid and what the current appraised value was, and then what percentage of that had to be paid from the general fund to the Light and Water Fund.
Yeah.
In this case, parks and streets, there won't be any of that. It's all general fund, and it's,
Less accounting calculation sounds like a good thing.
yeah. Right now, the parks rents from the Light and Water, if you know where they're at. And we pay them a lot of money for that place. I think it's $100 a month, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And Rob says it's too much.
It's such a quality building.
Oh, Rob says it's too much because if you fix the leaks, he would be able to work.
Pay 102.
Hey, the building's got leaks too, at least currently.
It's a roof and four walls. What's he want? You know?
All right, any other questions, comments?
Well, do you have some updated cost figures? I think we just want to make sure you're clear here.
Yep. We had included some costs in the packet. I guess I'll take a step back. We're really early on in the overall design phase of the project. We've got a pretty good start on the footprint and the spaces going in, as we've wanted to make sure that we were encapsulating as many needs as possible. So the building we feel pretty confident in. What's not as developed are those systems. So the mechanical systems, the plumbing systems, the extension of the fire protection system, and then the site costs. So what was included in the packet had some numbers based on current bidding climate, and were conservative because we didn't have a real good handle on what we were doing with those systems. And the systems for a building like this, mechanical, are probably in the $350,000 to $400,000 range. So those are a big chunk. They're upwards of 50% of the overall building cost. So what we're showing here is a revised opinion of probable cost.
Your eyes must be better than
Yeah, I
mine,
can't
Steve.
read it.
I'll try and
Yeah.
zoom in.
I think it says 0. Free.
Is this bigger?
Oh, you did do, oh, there you go.
That's the same. That's the same. That's the old one too. Yeah.
Do you want to try this? phone?
Oh,
I
it's,
got it
it's,
on there. That's the wrong one.
That's the older one.
it's different than what we have, though.
I know.
Yep. Yeah.
That's why he
This.
said it's revised.
Yeah. This one's revised. So we've tightened up the building number a little bit. I think it went from 1.8 to 1.5. The site costs here at 150. Again, that's still a number that's in play. We're still carrying, at this stage in the project, a contingency of 10%. And then the design, the permitting, the testing fees, and then we've got an allowance towards the end. The $25,000 is basically something we'd carry for, we've called it FF&E, but it could be just storage racks and things to kind of bring the storage up to snuff there. So the total cost opinion here is a little bit shy of 2.1, which is really close to where we were back in 2011 or 2012 when we started looking at the overall facilities. So again, there are still some questions. We feel more confident in this number. We're going to have to continue to work with city staff to hold this number. We already have engaged Focus on Energy, and we'll look for assistance from them. So we are starting some of those things that can help both keep the cost in lines and assist us. Focus is something that will be a larger number on a renovation because they like to, the light fixtures there, they like to replace them, and they'll give you more money for them then. So we did that on a light and water facility, but this will be a little bit greater value from a Focus on Energy standpoint. So any questions on the opinion of cost?
Nope. Thank you. If nothing else on that topic, then we'll move on. Item 8, discussion on South Main Street detour for 2018. And we have a memo, and we have some costs and some maps. Yes, and some road plans.
Ready?
This was like half the packet, I think.
It was. Took a trip to Wanakee, visited with them based on to go over what their road project issues were. Todd Schmidt, the village administrator there, a friend of mine, and we went and visited with him and the chamber director, and discussed their concerns about their road project. They felt that they had had a relatively successful project, that a lot of things went really well for them. The biggest thing that they were upset about was that the state had designated a detour that took everybody way away from the city. And the second they did that, they put boards on the Wanakee at the interstate exit. So when you drove by on 9094, you got the impression that you couldn't get off and get into Wanakee. Well, Todd said the whole project, you could drive through Wanakee, maybe a one-block detour. And he said that was an issue for them. The state's policy is that they use state highways for detours. So their detour route is going to be Highway 94 to Highway 26 to Highway 18. So if you're sitting at Wisco Farms, you're going to be told to go back out to 89, get on the interstate, go over to Johnson Creek, take 26 down to 18, 18 over to 89, and then you can come back up and go to the mill on the south side of the city.
No, the state's been doing that for forever, and that's the official detour, but
But
people that live in the
know-
area
yeah, know.
never go that way.
Correct, and probably the people who eventually get an idea, like the semi-truck drivers, aren't going to do that either. They're going to, as you remember, when we had the culvert collapse, they were driving down Jefferson to Grove to East Lake Park Place back onto Main Street. They didn't go the detour route. So the people who are driving down the interstate, who might stop and pull in at the Quick Trip or the BP or the McDonald's or whatever, or maybe be interested in Lake Mills and stop in and say, hey, what's downtown? They're not going to get off because there's a big board over it and they're just not going to take the risk. But the guys that are probably the most likely to take the risk are the semi-truck drivers who know the area, been through it a lot, say, I know how to get around that, and they're going to be pounding city streets.
Yeah. The people going to McDonald's and Quick Trip, being that it's right at the intersection, I would think that they're going to get some business, whereas Wanakee is 3, 4, 5 miles
Yeah,
off the
but you'd be
freeway.
surprised how risk-averse people are when they're driving down the interstate. And one of the debates that they had is if they do get off, it's a lot easier to capture them and pull them downtown than if you're trying to capture them while they're driving by on the interstate. So if you can get them to this intersection right here, you can get them downtown. Because really, you can drive all the way downtown without much issue. And the least amount of work will be done in the downtown.
So the state's going to actually close off the Lake Mills name on the signs, even though you can still get to Lake Mills?
Right,
And that's what they did when they did the culvert too, right?
yes.
That's the official policy, is that if you can't completely use the highway, then they,
So we're going to put up our own signs saying, ignore this, you can still get here? Is that one of the options I saw, or?
Yes, that's one of the options. There are some, Wanakee stuck up some signs that said open for business, but they aren't very, in the downtown area, as you got closer to Wanakee and they had these kind of like yard sign things out that said open for business, you saw them. But when you're driving down the interstate, it's not something you really notice. Now, again, he noted that it was further off than we would be. But again, if you'd have to be pretty confident that you're going to be able to get off and drive into the city versus, you look at it, you see the board over the sign, what are your opinions going to be? So the debate has been, should we have some other routes? And obviously, we believe, one, that there's a certain percentage of the population that won't be coming into the city that we'd like to be able to capture. Number two is that there's a certain population that's going to come through the city and use city streets that aren't set up to handle that type of traffic. And we got a lot of complaints on Grove and Jefferson and East Lake Park Place, or, yeah, East Lake Park Place when that occurred. And probably now with Pinnacle being there, and they probably ultimately will also use Pinnacle. So the debate was, is do we try and get the state to set a different route? And we debated 3 different options. I'm trying to see which one I got here. This one here is get off at 89. You take Highway V out to B, out at Brookstone. Then you get on B, go to County Highway Q in Astelin. Take Q all the way down to 89. And then you can come back up 89 to south side of the city. That one was more likely to be used than 26, 18, and 94. The highways are more capable of handling the traffic.
But you mentioned they'll want us to pay for temporary upgrades?
Well, what they probably want to do is when the street project is done, they will want us to pay to pave the streets again. Because there's a certain amount of wear that'll occur that'll take life off of it, and there'll be a certain amount of damage that's done that would have to be fixed. So we were looking at somewhere between 1.2 and 1.6 million dollars worth of repair work on those highways in order to use those as a detour.
Make that clear, the city taxpayers will pay $1 million to fix county roads.
County roads.
That we already pay county property taxes to go towards.
Right.
And
Right.
just to also clarify, that assumption was that that whole route would be pulverized and repaved,
The county routes.
county routes.
Right.
We wouldn't have to pay for 89. That's correct. Like I said, there's a lot of cities and villages have had success getting the state to contribute to those costs, but it's not going to be the full amount. So if you're looking at 1.6 million, you're probably looking at least $800,000 that the city would have to contribute to that at a minimum, and probably more up to the whole amount. The other options that we discussed were the ones in the city, basically ultimately using what doesn't exist right now, which is CP to Unshaven.
That's a whole new street.
Right, we would have to push that CP Avenue south a substantial different distance across the bike path into an operating dairy farm, and then come west between out on what's currently designated as a right-of-way that's called Unshaven Road.
And even though it's planned, we were going to pay for it through development,
Right,
but the development's not there yet, so
right. So this would be something that we would have to put up money for. The standard that we build to now, where we would just push the water and sewer, do some minimal sanitary sewer and water main construction to push it out from underneath the street, and then we would run the utilities eventually down the area outside the curbs, between the sidewalk and the curb. So we wouldn't have to build that right away. So the estimate that you have, which I think is $2.1 million, is stormwater and streets.
and what makes this option better than the previous one is the money spent will be within the city limits as opposed to us getting charged for something outside the city limits.
Right, this would be fully expended within the city. From a public safety standpoint, we've really had a long-term desire to have CP Avenue pushed through. And it's been in our transportation plan. It's been mentioned multiple times. Having one exit to the south side of the city is not satisfactory from most public safety standpoints. And I guess this is the key example is you get a project here and you can't get around to the south side with a street that's designated to be able to carry heavy traffic.
But that was assuming that we have development pay for that to minimize
Eventually.
the cost to the rest of the city.
Right. There is a certain section there that is in TID number 2 and 6, which is part of the project plan for the TID district, so there would be some TID dollars available to pay for that.
If it got built out.
No, it doesn't have to be built out, but it needs more than what we have right now. We're generating about, over and above, about, I'd say, $65,000 a year.
That's not going to do it, though,
Well,
for a
On
$2
a-
million
on a debt-
project.
on a debt basis for over 11 years, it would probably pay for a pretty substantial piece of it, but not all of it. And it can only pay for the portion from here to here.
Yeah.
It can't pay for all of it.
It might pay for the debt service, but you're not the principal.
Yeah, and the whole project is not going to pay for anything near that. So, again, we would look to the state to assist, but in the worst-case scenario, the whole $2.1 million could be ours. Now, that's assuming that all the roads would have to be upgraded again. That might not be the case, particularly seeing as is that on this one here, we use 89 for a substantial distance, and then we come down this route. And some of those roads there are relatively new, but there is one section that's pretty beat up from the creek to CP.
I don't know if I just followed you, but about roads upgraded, because that would be in addition to the 2.1?
What would be?
Well,
No. The 2.1 is the green route. So we'd have to do County Highway V, Owen Street, CP, all the way down, and then Unsaven on the way out.
I thought the 2.1 was,
The 2.1 is the extension of CP Avenue and Unsaven, and also, it does also include an assumed value for some right-of-way acquisition through
Right.
those farms to the south. That did not include any pulverizing or repaving of like Madison or Owen, CP north of.
Those will be
I'm
on.
sorry, Madison or Lake Street. It didn't include any.
So those would be potential extras.
And partially the reason why it was not included is, I guess that, how much wear and tear is kind of subjective. It'll certainly increase the wear on it, decrease the lifespan, but,
isn't that something you have to do that year?
right, and it's, how critical is it right after construction is, up for debate, or we'll have to see if this were to be used as the detour.
So I know that Chamber and Main Street think that these are the two better routes.
How's that? I mean, we already have signs on the interstate for Lake Mills, so we can usually tack on a sign saying, still open for business. And people,
Rent a billboard.
yeah.
We got plenty of those out along the road.
And that's much cheaper than $2 million. People off the interstate will still hit McDonald's and Quick Trip and the gas station. People from Fort coming up, they'll know how to get around. They'll go down County Q and over. So,
Yeah, that's kind of our worry is that a lot of people will start using internal city routes and pound them, and then we have to replace those anyways.
The detours, the official detour doesn't matter for that.
yeah.
Right? Well, that's what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
No matter where-
if you have a detour in
Yeah.
the city that's easy to take,
Yeah.
you're not going to go Jefferson to Grove
Right.
to this way if you've got something like this that's easy
It'd be
to
really
take.
nice to have that street, but for a one-year detour, $2 million, and yeah, you get to have that street longer term, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah, and we survived North Main reconstruction. We've all found our little detours to get around it to get home.
Yeah, but the geography of it was a lot more convenient for the north than it is for the south.
I mean, on the north side, the intersection of V and 89 had to be reconstructed. There's a lot of traffic that goes through there. It happened.
Yeah.
That's the only way to get from the freeway to the city. That was reconstructed.
What's your point?
There's not two exits off the freeway to Lake Mills. There's no redundant path. So why does there have to be a redundant path to the south side of the city at this point in time? When development comes, or you get an 80-20 grant, great.
I prefer just let the state designate the bypass, and we'll just put signs up saying we're still open for business. And people will find their way to the,
Well, how much wear do they anticipate on the highway?
On the state highways,
Yeah,
I don't think they anticipate much because it's constructed to,
yeah,
Those last forever, didn't you know that?
yeah,
I don't know that they last forever, but they last a lot longer than city streets do.
right. I mean, if I'm driving truck, I'm not gonna be exiting an interstate to drive down to Fort through Lake Mills. I'm still gonna go on the 26 anyway, so. Unless
I got
know
news
something-
for you.
unless you
Those
know-
truck drivers avoid those highways and come through Lake Mills intentionally. We discovered that last year. You want to call the chief of police and have
Really?
a discussion with him.
is it because of inspectors or what, traffic?
A little shorter?
Well,
Most of it, I'm not going to try and pretend to know exactly what it was, but I know that we stopped a lot of traffic and that there was a lot of discussion about why it was coming through and what the issues with it were.
did they say? I'm just curious. I mean, how do you know why people take a certain route? I mean,
Because they think it's the shortest and fastest at that particular time.
well, if shortest is going through a city with 35 miles per hour speed limit, that's
20, yeah, well,
quicker.
I'm not going to pretend, yeah, I can send you the survey.
Be curious.
It came out, and in fact, we're going to do another one here shortly. And so, I can give you an idea of what kind of traffic is using.
So in other words, the survey indicates that we've got a significant amount of truck traffic that comes through the city.
Yeah,
In this case, if it is a true road construction, local traffic only for this entire distance, then it will not be legal for those trucks to drive through this city.
that's correct.
Whereas it was technically, I guess, legal for the other situation.
Well, as long as 89 is open, it's legal for them to drive through town and use the truck routes. So you can use V and B and 89.
But there's laws that say that can be enforced to say you can't drive through here. This is a warning this time. Next time it's a ticket or whatever.
That would be what would have to be done. I'm assuming ticket revenues will rise.
They can pay for some signage.
Yeah. Offset that 2 million. So do you need a motion or something, or?
It wouldn't be bad.
Well, my motion is we let the state designate 26 to 18 as the bypass, but we look at putting signs on the interstate saying that we're still open for business.
Which is, I think, option 2.
Yes.
Yep.
There's no recourse with the Lake Mills being boarded over?
No, if that's going to be the designated route, it'll be boarded over.
Can't call the governor's office and tell them how many jobs are at risk?
Wanakee did that.
Wisconsin's open for business, but not Lake Mills.
If you can get them to designate another route, they'll take it off.
But the point is very valid that, if multiple cities have this issue with the state policy, maybe the state policy should change.
They were pretty rigid about it, and I understand why their policy is that way and in place, but so,
Yeah, maybe the legislature can talk to them,
yeah.
make a law. So we have a motion for option 2. Is there a
That's
second?
correct.
Technically, I think, Doug, only you can make the motion for a second unless I temporarily stop being the chairman.
I'll second.
Is that okay? We're not sure if you can.
I don't
I
have
would
any-
second if I could.
I don't like to say one way or the other, but I kind of have my doubts. I don't think it has electric or
Yeah.
sanitary sewer issues in it.
So Doug, did you say you were seconding it?
I haven't said a thing.
Okay.
My feeling is I have always wanted CP to be finished. And I understand right now expenses with the rebuilding of Main Street and so on. I think I got a question. If we were to build the finished CP, could any of the costs be recouped from businesses that would come into the TID district later on?
I'm sure that revenues from the TID would be applied to the debt that's eligible, which would be in TID 2 and 6. We would make every effort to get money from the state. Cross Plains was one that we saw that was successful in getting a pretty substantial amount of their rerouting paid for by the state.
Was their situation at all similar to ours?
I would say not. They needed a second route through the city, which they got. But they were further off of, they didn't have good access to alternate state highways like we do. So, Cross Plains is far enough off of 150, what is that, 151
14.
and 14? Well, I'm looking at interstate traffic. 14 is just a 2-lane highway that runs right through, right? And then you take P south and that hits, why am I talking about it? You live there.
12, yeah. 12 is about line.
Yeah. Yeah, so you got 12 to the east and 151 to the south?
Yeah. 12 is pretty close. 19? North.
So it doesn't have the access like we have to push it off, but they did have exactly the same issue in the fact that they did not have an alternate route through the city, and they got an alternate route built all the way through the city. And it did work pretty well, and I think they put up almost, not quite 50% of the money, the state put up the rest.
They got a route significantly upgraded. There were existing roadways, but they did build one new street. It was for business access, but that was not part of the official detour route. But it was a significant amount of money. Another slight difference is I've seen it a lot in the news recently that they did have the detour route that they rebuilt, or WSDOT helped rebuild, was a fairly obvious one that I think even non-locals would have used, and this is somewhat conjecture, but they ended up using a fairly common sense route as the detour around the downtown.
Well, CP would be a fairly common
It would,
sense,
yeah.
if it were there.
If it was there, right.
Especially
Yeah.
coming from the south, it's
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah, so there are differences between all of them that I've looked at. I mean, there's nothing that's exactly the same as like Mills, and but we were looking at it and saying if we're going to invest money in the V to B to Q to 89, I'd rather spend the money in the city and get the streets built here. Now, obviously, option 2 is the least expensive route that provides us our best option for not spending that kind of money. So that's what Wanakee ended up with.
So we have a motion, and if Doug, you don't want to do the second, then I'll set the gavel aside or whatever I need to do to make a second. Okay. I've never had to done this before, so.
Give it to.
I did, so you can do it.
So somebody else needs to be the temporary chairman, right? Do we have?
I think Doug is the vice chair, isn't he?
I am.
Oh, Todd is.
Okay.
Can I be it since I made the motion?
Well, Vicky isn't here, we could do it.
I think,
Yeah.
see, you made the motion when you weren't the chairman, so.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm temporary chairperson.
Oh, okay.
All right. We have a motion for option 2.
I would like to second option 2.
Mark seconds the motion. Discussion? Well, like I mentioned before, it's the least expensive. Everyone who lives in the city knows how to get down to Fort, how to get around South Main reconstruction. We just put up an open for business sign, people interstate to see that. They'll see cars still heading into Lake Mills off the interchange, and they'll realize, hey, the gas station's open, so is McDonald's, it's going in, so. Yes, Steve?
I should note that Mr. Shard did let me know that option 5 was his preference.
Yeah, my concern is that, though, the DOT is in deep trouble. They're
Yeah.
spending more than they're collecting.
They're going to be a little shy of giving away cash in
Yeah.
this environment, or this year, at least, it seems.
Yeah.
But
I
I mean, you can still ask.
can still ask, but they're in long-term trouble, and I don't see any long-term solutions coming out of the state assembly, so.
And we're, the city council does make the final decision here, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This is really a
And I think
recommendation to them.
that they probably will ask before they make the final decision. Because it always pays to
Is there any
ask.
Doesn't hurt to
factors
ask.
coming into play that we still haven't really talked about, or some study or something might turn up or something like that?
There's nothing that I know of. Brandon and Dustin both work with highway projects all year long in other areas, and you did the one up in Bayfield? Dustin did the Cross Plains one, and he did one in Port Washington area, and I haven't seen anything coming out of any of the ones that I've seen that would give us any indication that it just depends on, where the dollars are coming from and how what your legislators need when and those types of things.
The council wants to go to our state assembly people. I mean, how many months will it be before they have to make a final decision? I mean, this is until 2018, right?
Yeah, well, they've made their recommendation on the preliminary decision on the detour route, but my anticipation is that could change easily if something occurred, so.
I would add that if you were to try to do the CP Avenue Unsavin route, that would need to be built in 2017, so it was open for 2018, which would mean you'd need to start moving on it this summer in terms of platting and right-of-way acquisition and designing,
Wetlands permits.
wetland, you need to get some wetland delineations and permitting and.
State's supposed to operate like us. They decide on the budget at the beginning of the year, and if the money's not in the budget, you have to wait till next year. So,
Correct.
Theoretically, they operate like us.
yes,
We're never in a deficit that I know of.
yeah. Okay, any more discussion? Okay, on the motion for option 2, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Reich?
He doesn't get to vote.
Okay, sorry. Mrs. Wolf is absent. Mr. Fritsch?
Present.
I guess he abstains, I guess.
Abstain, yeah. Make it an abstention.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye. So does the motion pass on 2 to an abstention?
Yes.
Okay,
You got a majority.
all right,
Of those present, yeah.
all right, motion passes, and I abdicate back to,
All right. We'll just set that down there.
Is that all it takes?
I hope so. We're all friends. So, and that's really, that's our feedback to the city council.
Yep.
Next, item 9, discussion decision on CP Avenue water main. That keeps on breaking.
You've noticed.
I have.
Yeah, in 2013, we had a good year. We had 2 breaks. Last year, we had 5. So far this year, we haven't had any. But, yeah, we haven't had any.
You haven't
And-
found him yet.
Yeah, we haven't, good point, we haven't found them yet. Now, this is all in an area that's probably not even 100 yards long, kind of toward the intersection with Lake Street there. And we figure every water break, just for repairing the water break, is somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000. That doesn't take into account the amount of water that's lost.
And the asphalt.
Right. And like Steve says, it could be leaking right now, and we don't know. It's just an area of pipe that we anticipate will continue to break. And so that's why we're talking about seeing if we can replace this, and it maybe fits nicely into the work on remodeling the existing Public Works building and stuff. So those are my just overview comments. I'll turn it over to Brandon then.
I'd like to make a few comments. This is not that old of a water main.
No.
There's no reason that it should be acting like this.
Well, there may be.
Well, soil conditions, poor pipe, those types of things are probably what's tying into it. But if you consider normal situation, this would not be a typical for this short of a life of a water main.
Correct.
We have spent probably $25,000, $30,000 a year over the last several years fixing this water main. So we've probably come pretty close to paying for the project that we have here right now.
Already paid for, excellent.
is there a warranty? I mean,
It's kind of like going to the store and getting 30% off, though. We're still spending money.
There's a 1-year warranty on the product when it's put in originally.
oh, okay.
So how old is this main?
About 20 years old. I think it's 20 years old. Yeah. Might not even be that old. You think it's older than that? Okay. He'd know he was here longer than I was. That being said, how do we pay for it? That's a good question, isn't it, Paul?
That's an excellent question. That's your job.
Potato.
I just stop my feet until it happens, that's all.
I assume it's all a water utility.
Yeah.
It's a water utility issue. The water utility is not making a lot of money. In fact, it's losing about $5,000 a month. We are in the process of a rate review right now. But we have several major projects that are in the works that go along with it. So the question then becomes, how big of a water rate increase do we want to throw in 1 year? Because the water meters, the water meter upgrade, the most substantial portion of the the AMI upgrade is in water meters. They're the most expensive ones.
Do the water meters need to be replaced for doing AMI?
Yes.
A substantial amount of them, not all of them.
Yeah, let me qualify that a little bit. Something needs to be done to every one of them. Either they have to have an outside reader, or we replace the inside
Right.
part.
And there's reasons to do some meter replacements other than EMI.
Yes.
Correct.
There's a very large reason why we're going to do that, and we've been working on that very hard, haven't we, Dwayne?
Yeah, we should keep in mind that we also have a very high water loss. So we're anticipating that we've got some revenue issues in the amount of water that we're losing every year. And I'm not saying it's all going on CP Avenue, but I guess the comment is, or the point is that overall, the water utility needs some upgrading, some assistance. This is simply one of the symptoms, if you will, as we're looking at the rate increase and the water loss and our metering issues. We've neglected it for quite some time, and so it's, in my opinion, it's time now we start ticking off these issues and getting this thing back up to snuff.
So what are you looking for us from here? Does it make sense to do this now as a money issue?
It makes sense to do this now. It made sense to do this a couple of years ago.
Except for the money issue.
Except for the money issue. I think that our conversation internally is you fix it a couple more times, you've paid for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just a money issue of how the money is done. And so we think that we need to throw this project in and get it done this year.
And if you have to borrow for it, you have to borrow for
We
it?
have to borrow for it.
On the money topic, I might add that the cost opinion there is for the entire length of pipe that's shown on these two plan sheets, which, that could be reduced depending on, Paul and Steve's appetite. There's a few areas where you could cut back over and hook into the existing water main, and I guess reduce the cost of the overall project by not going quite as far north.
So do we know why this water main is doing what it's doing?
Based off of what Paul's told me, I guess we suspect some sort of anodic corrosion. This type of holes that he describes when they dig it up are like pits. They're
Yeah.
very small, fine holes which is a sign of this corrosion where a current is leaving the pipe. And then it creates that very specific corrosion point.
And a new pipe won't do this?
Well, if we were to do this, we would switch the pipe to a PVC C900 water main, so that the pipe itself wouldn't corrode. The fittings would still be ductile iron, but we had part of this, one of the line items here is for a cathodic protection, where you would weld it's called a sacrificial anode onto the fitting, where that current would then leave the fitting, go into the sacrificial anode, and the anode, it's just a big chunk of zinc usually, would corrode instead of the pipe.
So you don't have to do a wire with the whole length or anything, it's just something you attach to each
Right.
fitting.
And it just sits right there in
Yeah.
the ground next to the fitting.
Attacks the zinc before it attacks the iron.
Exactly, yep.
Well, do we have any other water mains made out of the same material? And if so, are they not leaking too, or?
It depends
Well,
on the specific areas,
most-
right?
Yeah,
All our water main is made of that material. We use cement line ductile iron, class 52. So the issue really comes down to soil conditions. And we believe, when we did the Lake Street project, East Lake Street there, we bagged the water main. In this case, I think that they're looking at it and saying a heavy plastic with ductile iron fittings would probably do the same thing.
and the thing I would add, of course, know where it's by a substation.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
And whether or not that's adds to the entire problem, it's a suspicion. And then the only other place we've seen this kind of behavior in the pipe is over on Owen Street, by where the daycare used to be. And do you know what sits by that daycare right there?
Substation.
There's another substation there.
It was.
And so our electrical engineer is highly suspicious of some kind of electrolysis or something like that.
Didn't we have some pipe issues just outside of this building?
Yes, but that was a pure age thing.
Okay.
When we rebuilt this street and put this building in, and I shouldn't say it's a pure age thing, we did not replace sewer or water. And so though, that alone, all the construction over top of old water main is always an issue. And then to top it off, the soils down here are pretty acidic too, so.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we've broken 6 times out here.
It stopped breaking, huh? Or did we replace it?
Well, we did not replace it, but we did replace pretty substantial lengths of it.
Yeah.
What
So
would-
one way to replace it, huh?
What would be the lifespan of the replacement?
Should be a long time, 80 years or something like that.
How much?
Like 80, water mains, new ductile iron water main or the C900 PVC water main lasts a long time. It should last a long time.
PVC put in correctly will last longer than the ductile iron. The key is getting it in properly, and then generally what happens to PVC is there are things traveling up and down in the soil that cut it up. But a 900 it's got a
It's
thick
pretty
wall
thick.
on it.
And if bedded and covered properly, according to the specifications like it's supposed to be, then that is supposed to eliminate some of that rocks and things moving up and down, coming into contact with the pipe that could crack it. It's a little bit more fragile than ductile iron, but not a whole lot.
When they originally started using PVC, the biggest issue they had was eggshelling. And eggshelling is, the first thing he said is if it's put in and compacted and bedded properly. Well, used to get, you had to compact the material on the outside edges of it so that it held it in a round shape, because if you didn't, the weight on top of it would make it go like this. And then it would crack at these outside edges. And that was why a lot of cities wouldn't use PVC, because you couldn't trust people to put it in properly. And even if they did, it still was a risk that it, with the weight on top of it, it would eggshell. But with a 900, that's a pretty substantial piece of water main.
So what you're saying is the amount of money spent so far patchworking it is 30% of what a full rebuild would
I'd
have
say
cost?
pretty darn close, yeah.
I
With
would
the
say-
anticipation we'll have more.
But patchwork has led nowhere, it's still,
Yeah, it's
Okay.
breaking probably within 10 feet of the last patch.
right?
And just kind of working its way north. Eventually we'll have a solid stainless steel pipe in there if we keep, because the patches are stainless steel, so.
Well, my motion is to direct staff to officially propose a new CP Avenue water main.
I'll second that.
Motion and second to move forward with CP Avenue water main. Any further discussion? See none, roll call, please.
Mr. Temperley,
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch,
Aye.
Mr. Pickard,
Aye. Motion passes. Item 10, recommendations for future agendas.
I just got a quick reminder, we're still kind of planning on June to do a tour. So we'll, like we did last year in October, we'll try to move it up so we can actually see stuff.
Okay.
So, and hopefully one of the things that we'll tour is the water and light building should be complete by then, and we can take a look at that.
And that'll be open to the public too? I think the last one was, even though one person showed up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, in the press.
Yes.
All right. Nothing else then? Okay, then declare the meeting adjourned. Thanks.